Uh, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Veronica Stusco, and I'm the founder and CEO of IAMTN. IAMTN is a leading non-profit membership organization representing the money transfer operators worldwide. We work closely with governments, regulators, regional associations, and private companies to promote the creation of safer, reliable, and efficient cross-border payments. We do this by connecting innovators, disruptors, and stakeholders to explore the opportunities and challenges in the remittance industry. If you are not a member yet, I would ask you to consider joining the IAMTN network as a member. Join us and discuss, debate, and explore the myriad of forces impacting the remittance sectors. In today's webinar, we will discuss if COVID-19 is the catalyst to push consolidation in the remittance industry, or will the digital allows players to remain independent. Today, Mohit Davar, our chairman, will be joined by Daniel Weber. Daniel is the founder and CEO of FXC Intelligence, a financial data company providing deep market intelligence on cross-border payments and e-commerce. Just a little housekeeping before we start. If you have any question during the webinar, please type them onto the question box in your control panel. We will bring them up during the presentations. And with this, I will pass control to Mohit Davar, our chairman, and Daniel.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Veronica. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar hosted by IAMTN. Seems like a long time ago that we had the last one, so I'm glad that we're all here, and thank you so much for joining. This time we're doing it slightly different. Rather than have a panel like we normally do, we're going to do this sort of effectively a fireside chat between myself and Daniel, or a virtual chat, as most things in life seem to be virtual right now. And I think what's different about this is everyone has an opinion, and God knows I have plenty. I can almost feel most of you nodding in agreement there, but I want to introduce a man who also has the data to substantiate and back his opinion. So a very warm welcome to you, Daniel, who's the CEO and founder of FXC Intelligence. Welcome, Daniel.
Appreciate that, Mohit. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, and welcome everyone.
Great. Well, look, before we start, and I bring Daniel into this, can we just do a quick poll, Veronica, to just get a sense of where everybody's connecting from and the organization?
Yes, I will.
So guys, Veronica, some of you who've joined before will be familiar with this. Veronica's launched this poll. If you'd be kind enough to click on the relevant answers, it will just give us an idea, and then Daniel and I can make sure that we're as much as possible tailoring our discussion as relevant to the audience. So, okay.
So people are still answering, so I will close it. Just a bit more people we have 82% of attendance responding. They're still responding, Mohit, that's why.
Okay, no, I think it gives us a sense. I think that's good. I think predominantly Europe, 50+%. And then...
Yeah, okay, I will close it now. We are 88% of responded, so...
Yeah, great. So mainly Europe, I think, and then mainly remittance service providers, which is great.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Great, thank you. So we can close that screen, Veronica. Perfect. Good, great. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for making the time. And I think everybody here has read your great research and the newsletter that comes out and on LinkedIn and so on. But I think it'd be great to sort of get an overview, first of all, from you on FXC Intelligence, and a quick intro, please.
Sure. Thank you. I'm going to make sure that everybody can see. So here we are. So thank you, guys. I mean, just as a kind of quick intro, I think we really want to spend the time talking about the industry and the data. But I set up FXC Intelligence about 5 years ago, just to focus on the best possible data and insights for the cross-border payment space. There is there was no single company just doing that. There's some great data from the World Bank and a handful of very large numbers that come out, the Bank of International Settlements, and after that there was very little. So that's what we decided to do. We're a team of mostly data scientists, researchers, technology people, split mostly between London and the US. And we track everything we possibly can in the sectors. I think many of you know, a lot of you read our newsletters, some of you read our Forbes column. We have very deep pricing data sets which we license around the sector, and we try to kind of help and advise. So that's essentially us. This is one of those nice slides that shows, well, we kind of work with all the different types of people that you can work with in the sector: banks, payment companies, regulators, investors, big tech. And so if you aren't on this list, please certainly reach out to me. We'd be happy to kind of bring you on. And without further ado, Mohit, let me hand to you, and we can get into the conversation.
Great, thank you, Daniel. So I think I know we're going to talk about the crux of it is about the M&A and COVID, but let's start with sort of getting your perspective on what does the landscape look like currently, particularly with COVID, because we heard the World Bank estimates came out of 20% down right at the outset. We've held a couple of these webinars. I keep seeing some incredible numbers flowing, to Mexico, to Philippines, everywhere. The remittances seem to be, if anything, going up. And I woke up this morning to an article from the Middle East saying that there's just a flood of money flowing back. But it was interesting. It actually pointed out that it wasn't because there's a boom in the Middle East, it's because actually people are losing their jobs and people are just moving their entire savings back, in terms of that. I mean, what's your perspective on the lay of the land, Daniel?
I think you're right. I think there are kind of two big forecasts that came out into the market. The World Bank one came out first at the 20% down. It also came out in April. So a hard time to forecast what the rest of the year would be like. And at that time, if you forecast anything in April, I think things were kind of pretty tough. I think Citibank put out another forecast, similar kind of time, maybe a little later. Theirs was only about 2/3 as bad, shall we say, as the World Bank one. And then I think the hardest thing to kind of predict in all of this has been, well, two things happened. No one could have guessed that digital would have changed the way that it had. So you had the digital enablement, but then you had just so many dynamics for people, as you allude to, around the world, and you have to go territory by territory, corridor by corridor, because some markets had stimulus for a while, which certainly supported people sort of continuing to send at their normal levels. The US obviously had a stimulus for a while. That's mostly fallen away. And then you had people were kind of stuck sitting in countries. Then now we're getting to the point where there's some form of, unfortunately, second wave coming. Maybe there is no job. So therefore, as you say, people are starting to send back. But I think you have to go territory by territory now, corridor by corridor. I think, a lot of the companies in the sector have obviously used this as a time to really fast track some of their digital products. So I think we have to also say, well, how have people been impacted? It depends how you serve the market. So if you're omnichannel, and we have our kind of big map here, which we recently put out of what we call the 150 incumbents, the leading incumbents, and the challengers. Virtually all the incumbents in the space, the Western Unions, MoneyGrams, Ria, are very omni-channel companies. So yes, some of their cash part went down, but they were there sitting there with digital ready to go. In some cases, for companies like Ria, they then fast tracked out some of their digital product. I think if you look at the challengers and the sort of most well-funded names that we know, people like the Remitleys and the kind of WorldRemits and the Azimos and there are many others. They were ready with their digital products, so kind of they've done well. I think the kind of group that has had a slightly harder time, but it's been mixed, are the ones that are very cash out only focused. The traditional agent businesses, and then you have to still go into, well, what market are you in? Because in the US, some of the players, maybe in Intermex, for example, has actually was doing actually very well if you look at their reports and their filings. But depending what happens in the US over the next 3 to 6, 9 months, they may lose some of that. So I think overall it's not been as bad yet as what was forecast. None of the numbers have suggested that. But then we're also stuck with a difficult crystal ball of, well, what might some form of second wave, which we seem to be in some partial one at the moment, and can the governments afford to give another stimulus round to many of the people in remittances? And then of course we all know there's a whole segment of the remittance market that is not eligible for stimulus payments, and that's a really hard segment of the market. So you have all the macro elements that you have to overlay, and then you have all of the individual companies. So that's so overall, I would agree with you. It has not been as bad. Definitely some peaks. You even had times when in March the US dollar was very strong against the Mexican peso, so people just use that as an opportunity to send money. So I think a lot of remittance senders are also very smart because they send money so often. So they know if there also is an exchange rate opportunity, and there's been a little bit of volatility in the last few months in the market as well, they may also use that. So you still have, yes, everybody charges their pricing, but underneath that is an exchange rate, which is the major price always in the market. So if that goes very much in favor of a sender, they may decide to also use that opportunity. So those are typical metrics, and then you overlay all your COVID metrics on top of it.
No, that's right. And I think also in October, I believe that the World Bank Nomad will update those figures. So I think it'll be very interesting to see when they get those new figures as to what exactly we're seeing. But very difficult to predict, especially as in the UK, it's a pretty hot topic with the second wave coming and exactly what that is going to look like. I think let's run a quick poll, Veronica, if we can at this stage, because we had everybody tell us over the last two as to what their experiences was in terms of the decline or no decline as they're seeing. So it'll be good to get a sense from the audience as to what are they seeing in their individual markets. You probably need to take control of the screen back from Daniel. Yeah.
At least looking at it, but they probably never would imagine the amount of kind of greed that they would get right when they started looking at it. And some of the tech valuations are still much stronger than traditional money transfer valuations. Some parts of remittances are highly valued, but I think, as we said, TransferWise is much higher valued on a multiple than the WorldRemit Sendwave deal, for example. So they could buy them, but then you are buying people at sort of much lower valuations possible. So they have the wherewithal. It's not totally obvious whether it would make sense for them, and they could do it themselves if they wanted to. So
we're going to try and start wrapping up, because I know you and I could.
We could go on for hours, but that's not
we do sometimes, as you know. But so as you look into your crystal ball, do you see another transaction this year? And if so, do you want to go out on a limb and say who that might be?
Probably yes, and maybe no to your answer there. I think there may be, but it's not. When you kind of look at this map, it's not clear what that transaction would actually be. So there may be a small. I also have some fear that if the pandemic is kind of difficult again, signing off on a transaction now could be. I mean, it was no surprise no transaction was done for the last 6 months until August, because no one was going to do a transaction. So unfortunately, the pandemic may, if there's a second one, I think that may preclude a transaction. Now, there's a couple of examples if players get in trouble. That unfortunately may drive an acquisition. Do I want to go out on a limb and say who it would be? No, because if it's talking about a player that gets in trouble, that wouldn't be nice. But I think, but that may be the dynamic that would do it. But it's still been slow. There's nothing to suggest we're going to have 20 transactions in the next year. Nothing, right? There's no. You couldn't possibly. Could we have a handful? Absolutely. Could we have 20? Nothing to suggest you could have 20 transactions.
Yeah. I digress slightly, Daniel, but every time I look at this chart, it reminds me of, I'm sure you get a lot of calls saying why their name is not on there, but I had 2 conversations with people saying, really, incumbent? I thought we were the challenger. So
yeah,
that drives a higher valuation.
We get a few phone calls. In fact, the one thing that we do have, which is great, is unlike many things that you can't pay, no one can pay to get in this or on it. And you get just, if we think someone is interesting, they get on this map. And so you have to live with where you put you, but you can't complain as well because you didn't pay to be part of it. So as each year goes on, it gets slightly, we get slightly tweaked, and I think this one's pretty good. Last year, yes, there was one group that pleaded to be moved from one box to another box, but that's not how always life is. So
true, very true. So one last poll, guys. I know we're running out of time. Veronica, if you could launch the last one. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks in terms of, what is the biggest threat from these guys to the current incumbents. I mean, it'll be great to see if you guys can poll on this. And wow, nobody thinks of Google or Facebook as a threat. Oh, we got one Facebook, but mainly Ant Financial, Amazon, no Tencent. I think they're all voting Ant because of possibly political change in the US. They may come back. Interesting. Okay. Well, look, we can end the poll, Veronica, but and then share the results. I mean, clearly, Ant Financial, 57% of the people think it's Ant Financial. Nobody thinks Tencent. I don't know. I wouldn't rule Tencent out. I mean, Tencent is actually doing remittances.
Yes, they are.
Launched a great WeChat video that I know some of you guys have seen. I always put up from Hong Kong to Philippines, and actually EMQ does a lot of their stuff. So. But very interesting. Let's see where we end up. So, well, look, I mean, I think I've also said for years that basically the way I would summarize the M&A scene, I think in the remittance world, is that everyone who is out wants to get in and everybody who's in wants to get out. So, that's pretty much the sort of summary of where we are. I know we talk about numbers all the time. I think there's really never been a more important time in terms of the focus on the remittance industry, just because of the service that it provides, in terms of connecting families and moving money. And I think that's really come to light with the COVID world. And so, again, I would really ask you guys to give your feedback, obviously on this webinar, but generally on the COVID-related issues, because IAMTN is actively participating in a number of initiatives in terms of call to action with the Swiss and UK government, obviously supporting the IFAD initiative, FATF, and so on. Well, look, with that, let's bring it to close. Daniel, thank you so much for your valuable time and for your insight. And I hope everybody found this as interesting and informative as I did, as always. And again, to make the plug as Veronica has told me to do it, if you're not members, please contact her and become members. And also subscribe to the newsletter. I'm telling you, it is a great piece of work. So thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
No, thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.